Warm welcome here just outside the Cape Town City Hall. The stage is set for this evening's State of the Nation address. President Cyril Ramaphosa will obviously, in about 4 hours' time, be the person that takes the 21-gun salute and also sing the national anthem to mark the beginning of this year's State of the Nation address. Of course, as I'm speaking to you now, not much happening, but of course the shuttles are beginning to bring all the logistical stuff that will be needed for this afternoon. The event has been given a thumbs up, but now the issue is when at 4 o'clock strikes, the MPs will be beginning to come and make their way into this event, which is here at the Cape Town City Hall. But I'm not alone this afternoon. I'm with my colleagues. Good afternoon to you, Bongiwe Zwane and Sakina Kamwendo.
Bulelani and the viewers as well. Thank you so much for joining us for this special broadcast as the South African public wait in anticipation for the delivery of the State of the Nation Address 2023. A lot of promises were made in previous years. You think back to when President Cyril Ramaphosa made his first State of the Nation Address right in Parliament. It wasn't here at the City Hall, but it was at the National Assembly building, which of course we do know was gutted by a fire. It's the second year now that Parliament is sitting at the City Hall. It's been declared once again as a parliamentary precinct. And you think about the fact that, a lot of people were thinking about that moment when the president was talking about the new dawn, the song Tumamina, I want to be there, and a lot of people felt a sense of optimism. It seems to be a different tone this time around as South Africans are battling with rolling blackouts. South Africa still touch and go as far as the issue of the possibility of being grey listed goes. You think about, businesses, small and big, are struggling when you think about the issues of the rolling blackouts. The impact there has been quite huge. But let's have a conversation here in studio about some of the issues that we've seen, particularly when you think about a number of people who, have been battling and have been going through quite a lot. When you think about small businesses, you think back to the front page of the Sowetan newspaper quite recently, painting a picture for us of some of the businesses that have had to shut down. Let's speak to Kim Silberman, economist at Rand Merchant Bank, and also with us is Professor Amanda Hoos, a professor in political science at the University of Stellenbosch. Thank you so much to you both for your time. I'll begin with you, Prof. A number of people, for them, it feels like they're not expecting a lot, but others are looking to the president to give some kind of hope, particularly in this difficult time that South Africa is finding itself in. What are your expectations? Yes,
so this cannot be a State of the Nation address business as usual, with the president getting on the podium and telling us about the achievements of the ANC. He will have to address the overlapping crises we have at the moment, and the biggest one, of course, is load shedding. And load shedding is causing a knock-on effect on the economy, on food security, and all kinds of other issues. So, I think he needs to spell out concrete plans and strategies to deal with this, with the Eskom problem. And I think this is what the citizens expect. Now, I think many people are very disillusioned, and if we look at opinion polls, the trust in political parties, parliament and the police are around 30%. The president's levels of trust has also come down. So you have actually a legitimacy crisis in the making. And unless the president tonight gives us some reassurances, I'm not sure that the citizens will actually, be very happy with the way that they're not happy at all, but I mean, this will just contribute to their distrust and lack of confidence.
For you, Kim, Prof talks about a legitimacy crisis, and some analysts that I've been speaking to in previous days, they were talking about how believability is not only the order of business right now. You also need to move on the promises that you make, and implementation is also going to be key.
Yes, although you can only really say things in the SONA. You can't do things in the SONA. So he already faces a history of promises that have not materialized. And so it really makes it very difficult, I think, unless you had to announce something material, a change, a political change that I think citizens could feel their frustrations would be relieved by that. And it's very hard to imagine what that might be. So I feel that, you know, he's probably set up for failure in a way this time round. But I think he can probably make up for it in the short term if he makes decisive changes with respect to the cabinet reshuffle. We've got the budget later on. So we've got quite a lot of, and as you mentioned, grey listing. So this is a series of events this month. It's you know, it's not just the SONA, it's the SONA, cabinet reshuffle, grey listing, and the budget. So I think maybe we should view it as a month to see what happens, what comes out of this, and maybe then evaluate where we could go from here.
And I suppose the other layer that then makes things difficult is the vehicle, if I can use that word perhaps in this context, that you have local government that is meant to be a vehicle to deliver some of these services to the South African masses, but we're seeing a lot of municipalities being in a state of dysfunction, and some of them not being able to meet even the basic requirements. How difficult of a task is it going to be when you look at that, in particular the fact that now a lot of services need to get to the people, a lot needs to be done in terms of implementation?
That's been a problem for a long time in the making. I think 12 years ago I looked at the finances of local government, and you could see already then the user pays approach was not working, and the municipalities were starting to have a crisis in terms of where to get revenue from. And I think things have been tough since the financial crisis in terms of funding for municipalities. But I think it's also, as you mentioned, there's a lack of capacity in municipalities. And municipalities are your building blocks of the economy. If you don't get those right, it's very difficult actually to grow an economy without the building blocks. So that's where small business happens, and that's where employment creation happens.
Prof, for you, what does he say tonight to a nation that has seen unprecedented rolling blackouts, for people to walk out of there, the MPs and the dignitaries that would be there, but also the South Africans who will be listening to him? What does he say to them to inspire confidence?
Well, I think the ANC government needs to take accountability for this crisis. You know, they've been blaming Eskom, they've been blaming Andre de Ruyter, but in the last instance, they're the oversight mechanism, and specifically the minister where this Eskom is located in that department. So he can't just, go on as though there is no crisis. And if the government is announcing a state of disaster, then we need to know what that state of disaster implies, what it will imply in terms of strategies, and what the ANC is going to do to alleviate. For example, job losses, people are losing livelihoods, and so he needs to speak to that as well. This is a man-made disaster. It's not a disaster visited upon us. And I really think it is to be sincere and to take accountability.
And in your view, Prof, is the declaration of the state of disaster possible if it comes? Is it really what South Africa needs right now to get out of this crisis?
I don't think so. Personally, I don't think so. I really think it is about getting the private sector involved, getting a big diversity of types of power, so green power, solar, water, wind. Get that off the ground, open the grid so that individuals can put power back into the grid. There's a big hold on to the power as provided by Eskom. But we know there's enough power to supply from outside of Eskom, but government is not making it possible.
Kim, in all of this pool or basket, if one can say, of what is going on, of the issues, you think about the rising cost of living, you think about interest rate hikes and you know, what South Africans are battling with. But at the same time, I mean, I was reading, you know, what the head of the NPA is saying, that it's still touch and go as far as the grey listing is concerned, because we're still not meeting those requirements. How bad can it be for us if it comes?
Well, the good news is that it's probably not that bad. I think a lot of the banks have already put in risk mitigation and they're prepared for a grey listing, because the chances are that we will be grey listed. South Africa has a large cash economy, and that became very clear with the SONA Commission. So that's not about to, it's not something that can be resolved in a short space of time. So from that perspective, difficult to see that we won't be grey listed, although we may get another year's grace. But it's not something that I expect will be have an effect on economic growth. We maybe want to just watch for, I think, a lot of the mandates globally. So those funds offshore that invest in South African assets, South African currency, bonds, equities, they're starting to get ESG mandates that are a lot more limiting on where they can put money. And grey listing may actually then impact those portfolio flows. But I think what we also need to bear in mind is they've changed. These criteria that we've been judged on are quite new. And if we're the first emerging market to be judged by these criteria, and the point's being made that if other emerging markets were judged by these criteria, almost all emerging markets would be grey listed. So I think that was quite an interesting point for us to consider. Yeah.
All right, that's let's just hold it for a second, but that's quite interesting, Kim, especially because we don't think about, you know, the criteria and whether it's been tested before, and listening to you, it's quite interesting, you know, that you say this is quite new. So that is Kim Silberman as well as Professor Amanda Gous. They are still with us here in studio. But Flo, before you know, we come to you, the stage is being set. You know, tonight we are of course expecting that both houses of Parliament will meet up tonight. We do expect a total number of members of Parliament, 490. 400 of them come from the National Assembly, 90 are with the National Council of Provinces. There's also going to be dignitaries who will be in attendance. These include former President Thabo Mbeki, former Deputy President Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka. You also are expecting to see the Chief Justice Raymond Zondo with his Deputy Justice Mandisa Maya, and 15 other judges will also be in attendance. And there'll also be the confirmed number of guests that will be in the gallery, around 263, which include 10 netball captains of different countries who are gathered here in Cape Town. So we will, of course, be seeing quite a number of dignitaries arrive this afternoon. We'll be bringing you more of that. And they say it's not the red carpet. They're not calling it pomp and ceremony. But as they walk in, our reporters are standing by to get as much detail out of them as possible.